YouTube, what's up? PCC students, what's up? Look, I didn't get to say what's up to YouTube in my last video because, well, last Wednesday when I recorded this, I thought we were still going to be on and we were going to see each other in person. And that was a week ago. Today's Wednesday of the next week of this time of this recording. And wow, has so much happened in a single week. If there is one silver lining to anything going on with the coronavirus right now, it's that it's forced our hand to make this YouTube channel a reality. And I'm really excited about it. It's been a dream of mine since I took over this role and even before that. So the fact that you're here watching, some of you watching it live right now, is fantastic. I'm so glad that it's happening. If you are watching live, you can comment in the box just to it's going to be to my left, I guess. Still learning what it looks like. But if you're watching this after the fact, that's okay too. I mean, that's one of the benefits of YouTube right there, is that whether you're live or not, you can come back to this anytime. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this. You know, YouTube, I use YouTube basically every day now. And I know that pretty much anybody watching this is probably the same way. YouTube has become kind of an essential part of what I do, but hasn't always been that way. For a long time, I was like against people who always used YouTube. I don't know why. I just had some weird vendetta against them. Like, you're wasting too much time on your phone. You should be outside playing, when meanwhile I was, chilling on my phone, probably on Facebook at the time. So I didn't really have a lot of self-awareness then, but for whatever reason, I was just against people who use YouTube. The one thing that I used to love to watch on YouTube was this channel called Ask a Ninja. Now, this was like one of the first popular YouTube channels, like when YouTube was starting, which I remember, by the way. When YouTube was starting, nobody was really on it, because why would they be? It's brand new. But there was this channel called Ask a Ninja. It was this guy who would sit in a scenario much like I am right now, dressed in the whole ninja garb. And people would submit questions to him, and he would just answer them. Now, he wasn't a ninja, not even close. But it was just really goofy and really funny. It was hilarious. I think I would still find it funny today, even though I was probably like 13 when I was watching it. Maybe even later than that. I don't even remember. It's been a while since I've been 13. But I used to love that channel. It was like the only thing I used to watch on YouTube. And in fact, it's partly because I was just obsessed with the idea of a ninja. Now, this was a comedy thing that they were doing, but just like ninja in general. I used to be fascinated by them because of their dedication to their craft, their ability to just be silent whenever they needed to be, to blend in to the crowd and not be detected at all, to walk anywhere they wanted and not be heard. It was wild. Like, it was fascinating to me that they could do that, and that they would train day in, day out, 24 hours a day to do this effectively. Now, I've loved ninja in comedy. I've loved ninja in anime. Naruto is my favorite anime of all time. So shout out to my Naruto fans. Like, obviously that's, ninja kind of different, but still ninja in a sense, and of course their reality. And what you can learn from ninja is that sometimes our silence is important. We go about our life so much just talking, or scrolling, or whatever it is, and we don't ever give ourselves time to sit and be silent. And while that's not the point of what I want to talk about today, it leads into what I do want to talk about today well, because while silence is good for you and I, we don't often think at all that God should be silent. In fact, when God is silent, we feel like he's abandoned us or isn't listening to us or whatever else that we think. We believe that he has forgotten us. And we don't ever want God to be silent. And I know if I were to ask you, hey, do you wish God wouldn't speak to you? Like, no one would say that. Even if you don't believe in God, even if you straight up said you were an atheist, you would say, well, if there was a God, I would want to hear from him. So nobody really wants God to be silent. And yet, if you've ever thought about God for even a moment, you've probably wondered, is God silent? And that's the question we're going to answer today. Is God silent? This is the last week of our God is Not series. We've answered, is God careless or rather, is God ashamed of me? And we've also answered, is God useless? Today, we're going to answer, is God silent? And I think when you hear the answer, especially combined with the answers to the previous two questions, you will have a fuller picture of who God is and know just how much he cares for you. So we're going to look at a story in the Bible about, is God silent? So, is he silent? Let's find out. So tonight, to answer this question, we're going to look at the book of 2 Samuel. Now, Samuel's all about King David, who is the most famous king of Israel. He listened to God in everything that he did and was called a man after God's own heart because of it. When no one else would fight Goliath, David went to fight Goliath and won. When David became king and gained some real power, any battle he had, he would always listen to God on whether or not to fight it, and he would always succeed because of that. Even when he knew he could win a battle, even if he didn't consult God, he would, and because of that, he had great success. However, David wasn't always perfect, and like all of us, David made mistakes, and we're going to read about his most famous mistake, at least in part. I'm going to tell you about it, and then I think we can use what happens after that to answer our question. So in 2 Samuel chapter 11, David, who has everything, a palace, money, wealth, land, even women, a lot of women, that was just how it worked back then. He went outside one day of his palace and saw a woman bathing on her roof. Her name was Bathsheba, but he didn't know it. As soon as he saw her, he was mesmerized. And by the way, if you're still stuck on her bathing on her roof, it was normal back then, okay? So don't worry about it. But he was mesmerized. He knew he had to have her. So he calls somebody over and says, hey, who is that? And he says, oh, that's Bathsheba. That's Uriah's wife. Turns out Uriah is a military leader in David's army who currently is fighting David's battle in the story. But that didn't stop him. He knew he had to have her. So you can read about the rest of this in 2 Samuel 11, but through a series of events, he intentionally puts Uriah on the front line of the battle and gets him killed so he can have Bathsheba. That is seriously messed up. That is messed up. But we all made mistakes. Maybe not the same one as that. But what happens after this is what I think can answer our question. In 2 Samuel chapter 12, Nathan, a prophet, speaks to David. And I'm not going to put this on the screen. I'm just going to read it a little bit here. But just listen to these words because Nathan's going to tell a story to help David see a truth. So, the Lord sent Nathan to David. When he came to him, he said, there were two men in a certain town, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had a very large number of sheep and cattle, but the poor man had nothing except one little ewe lamb that he had bought. He raised it, and it grew up with him and his children. It shared his food, drank from his cup, and even slept in his arms. It was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man refrained from taking one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare a meal for the traveler who had come. Remember, he has a bunch. Instead, he took the ewe lamb that belonged to the poor man and prepared it for the one who had come. David, when hearing the story, burned with anger against the man and said to Nathan, as surely as the Lord lives, the man who did this must die. He must pay for that lamb 4 times over because he did such a thing and had no pity. Nathan looks David straight in the face and says, David, you are that man. That is what you just did with Bathsheba and Uriah. Look at all of the stuff you have, yet you took the one thing that he had from him and got him killed to take it. David goes on to see his mistake for what it is and asks God for forgiveness, and God is faithful to forgive because he knows David loves him. But I'm not really so concerned on the mistake in this story. And again, not even the story itself, but how it happens. Because how it happens is the answer to our question, is God silent? You see, God could have done anything to tell David this message. God can do whatever he wants, by the way, if you didn't know that. But he could have sent angels down to David and said, you are that man. Or he himself could have, straight Kool-Aid man through the wall and said, you are that man. God could have sent any number of miracles could have used his own voice to tell David. But what does he do? God sent Nathan to tell David. God sent Nathan to tell David. And that right there, that act is the answer to our question, is God silent? No, he's not silent. But if you're waiting on a big booming voice to just show up in the clouds or a miracle, certainly those things can happen. We can read about that plenty in the Bible, but so much more often than not, God chooses to speak through you and me. God chooses to speak through people, not miracles or the supernatural. Again, although he can and has, more often than not, he chooses to speak through you and through me. Last week in our small group discussion on YouTube, several of you came, thank you by the way, and I asked you the question in our discussion, have you ever heard God speak to you? And all of you said yes, and had at least some semblance of a story as to what that was about, which is fantastic. The fact that you're hearing from God is incredible. Now, you might not all be able to say that, and if that's you, I would love to talk to you about that. But those of you who have heard God speak to you, you probably heard it from somebody else because they had the faith to go where God told them to go and speak into your life about it. I want to tell you about a guy named Randy. Randy is a wealthy man. Much like David was, he works a high-paying job. He works a lot for his money, but he has a ton of it. And Randy is just an older single man who delivers babies as a profession. And so he's just working all the time, has so much wealth. And Randy has found a home at a particular restaurant. I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of regulars at a restaurant, but it's just people who come all the time, and the staff start to know them, start to know their order and everything. Just ask Ellis Hobson about that. At Subway, he just walks in and they just start making a sandwich. I'm not even making that up. Ask him about it. But Randy is a regular at a restaurant, and he's been going there for several years. And Randy, he knows that he's a wealthy man. He also knows that he's been called to some sort of generosity. Now, I'm not sure he would attribute it to God. In fact, I don't know exactly how he feels about God. I know he grew up in a Christian home, but he knows that he's been given a gift with his job and that he can share it. So, in the midst of all of this coronavirus, you might be thinking, as I am, at least in our world, if you're a student or if you're me, the actual coronavirus itself isn't so much of a worry. It doesn't really seem to be much more than a flu for us in terms of if we had it. The real worry comes with everything that's shutting down. And in a lot of cases, some of your parents not being able to work for who knows how long. Or in my case, my wife, Megan, her restaurant was just closed yesterday, literally yesterday at the time of this recording. And at least for the next 2 weeks, she's not going to work. And if she doesn't work in the restaurant business, if you don't work, you don't make money. So, with that sort of thing going on, I know that there's some anxiety for you, and there definitely is for me. But this guy Randy I'm talking about, he's not fake. I'm not making him up. He's real. He's a regular at Megan's restaurant. And just yesterday, he was there because he knew this was coming. And his job, people are going to still be having babies. So his job isn't going anywhere. But he knew that people he cared about, their jobs were going somewhere, and that he could help. So I won't disclose what he did, but he left Megan a generous tip yesterday. And Megan and I we were talking about it last night, and we were just saying, we don't even know if Randy knows that God is speaking to us through Randy. God, in the midst of all that's going on, is saying via Randy to Megan and I, you don't need to worry about this. I'm the God of everything, including money. And you get so caught up in thinking about where the next paycheck's going to come from, how the next bill's going to get paid. But you don't have to worry. And he's saying that through Randy's generosity. God is speaking through Randy. And I'm not even sure Randy knows it, which is what's crazy. But God knows it, and we recognize it. And stuff like that is happening all over the place right now, especially in our world today, because anxiety is at a level that it's not normally. It's heightened all across the world. So what I want to leave you with tonight, and what I hope that we can talk more about in our small group time, is this. God wants to speak to you and through you. And we've already talked about how you can hear God's voice. We did that last week in our video. So if you want to check that out, it's still here on YouTube. And even in our Discord server, the conversation is still there. You can see it. We've already talked about how to hear God's voice. But the key for this is once we hear it, we've got to share it with other people, especially now, where people don't know what the future holds. For those of us who believe in God and love Jesus, we know exactly what the future holds. Jesus wins. None of this can conquer Jesus and his power. And yes, we might not know exactly what tomorrow holds, but Jesus tells us we don't even need to worry about tomorrow. Just worry about today. He can handle tomorrow. And that's a message we need to share with people, because they need it more than ever. So my challenge for you is to share what God is saying to you. Because the only reason people think God is silent is because you and I, we're not doing our part. And I can say that about me. This is why I feel called to this. This is why I'm so passionate about speaking to you. It's because I feel like I need to do my part in speaking what God has taught me to and what God has told me to. And that's my challenge for you. God is speaking to you. And if you'll listen and hear what he has to say, he'll ask you to share it with someone else. And then when that person who you share it with asks, is God silent? Then you say, no, he's not silent, because I heard him through you. So I hope that you will do that. May you pray that God would speak to you and that you would listen and hear. And that when you do, may you have the courage to share that. Because now, more than ever, people need you to be the light of the world, to be the salt of the earth. God has called you to that. So use that calling to help someone else today. I'll see you in the Discord chat here in just a minute. You can find a link in the description below this on how to get there. Come talk to us about this, because there's so much more to be said. I'll see you there.